Secretary, Mr. Chairman, thank you for appearing today for your testimony. I would like to associate myself with the remarks that Chairman McCain made earlier today about arming the Ukrainian government. He and I traveled there last month to as far east as we could go to Dnipropetrovsk. We saw very brave and skilled soldiers. We saw them doing things like constructing unmanned aerial vehicles out of styrofoam to meet their needs. And in addition to the lethal aid they need, they also still need a substantial amount of non-lethal aid. Some soldiers have the improved first aid kits that our soldiers have been carrying overseas. Some soldiers have first aid kits that look like they came out of the prop scenes in MASH, in addition to radar systems and radios and so forth. But moving on to the Islamic State. One point that I don't think has been discussed here today is the Islamic State in Egypt. There have been a series of spectacular terrorist attacks in the Sinai Peninsula. The Islamic State takes credit for those attacks. We still have the multinational force and observers in the Sinai Peninsula, almost 1,800 soldiers, 1,200 of which are American personnel. Secretary Carter, General Dempsey, can you explain to us what steps we've taken to ensure that our troops in the Sinai Peninsula are adequately protected and are working with the Egyptian security forces to not just defend themselves, but try to defeat the Islamic State in the Sinai Peninsula?
Thank you. Let me address the Ukraine part first, and then the chairman can address Sinai. First of all, thank you for going to Ukraine. I've been there many times, and the government there and the people there, particularly in the western part of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin's conduct there has had the opposite of whatever effect he thought it might have in terms of attracting Ukraine in the direction of Russia. He has strengthened the feeling among Ukrainians, particularly in the western part of the country, that they want to have a future that they determine and that isn't determined from outside. And to get to your point, we're constantly assessing, and this gets back to the chairman's earlier point, the kind of assistance that we provide to the Ukrainians. The principal kind of assistance, however, is, I'll come back to the military part in a moment, but I can't emphasize the importance of economic assistance to Ukraine. And that's largely in the hands of the Europeans. And so also are the sanctions against Russia. And that's really the main event. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of that. That's because that's mostly a matter for the EU rather than the United States. We are less directly involved, but we certainly support the EU, both in its sanctions against Russia, which we share, but theirs are more important because their volume of trade is greater, and also their efforts to strengthen the Ukrainian government and economy, support reform there, and the independence of Ukraine. I did talk to, as I mentioned, to the defense minister there about what he needed, and his principal focus was on training. And so, as I said, we'll constantly reassess that, but we are assessing that, and I'm open to what we do in the future. I've indicated that. I continue to indicate that. But his emphasis was on training, and we have trainers now in Yavoriv, which is the principal training range there. That's much appreciated. He was asking me and us for more of that kind of training. I think we'll continue to do that and to support the Ukrainian military. I should say that the defense minister of Ukraine used to be the interior minister, which is a very good combination because the Russian and separatist threat is a hybrid kind of threat. Hybrid in the sense that it's signified by the little green men phenomenon, a combination of the exercise of malign influence through sort of KGB-type tactics on the one hand, and battlefield operations on the other. And he's somebody who really understands that kind of hybrid warfare. Yeah. That's really where he wants our help.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I don't mean to cut you off, but I would like to know on and have other questions.
Yeah, on the MFO, about 9 months ago, anticipating and watching the intel stream about the radicalization of the Sinai and the fact that the Egyptian armed forces had moved resources to their western border. We actually did a joint staff integrated vulnerability assessment, and as a result of that, we introduced Blue Force Tracker raid towers, changed movement techniques, enhanced their communications, put in some counter-mortar radars, things that you're very familiar with. We also have been in touch with our Egyptian Armed Forces colleagues. They've increased the number of they've brought back Egyptian Armed Forces into the Sinai. They accompany us on our movements when we make them. And of course, we recently released some of the capabilities that had been withheld from them so that they could address their terrorist threat in the Sinai.
You're confident that American personnel in the Sinai currently has adequate protection against terrorist activity there?
I'm confident that they are adequately protected today, but I fully expect that threat to increase. And in fact, I recently had a conversation with the Secretary about the future of the MFO mission, which, as you know, really hasn't changed in the last 50 years.
Thank you. I'd now like to move to the heart of the Middle East and the Islamic State. For the record, I think the Islamic State is a grave and growing threat. But until they develop their own ballistic missile program and until they have thousands of centrifuges and tons of uranium, I believe the Islamic Republic will be a graver threat than the Islamic State, that is, the Islamic Republic of Iran. My objections to the course we've taken in the nuclear negotiations are well known, and I will not repeat them here. But I will note that Iran remains an anti-American, terror-sponsoring outlaw regime that is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of Americans from Lebanon to Iraq, Afghanistan. General Dempsey, you served 3 different tours in or associated with Iraq. How many American soldiers died at the hands of Iranian militias or explosively formed projectiles during your command?
Yeah, I recently heard both the Chief of Staff of the Army and the current CENTCOM commander put that number at about 500.
Hundreds of Americans died, and probably thousands were wounded or suspected of being wounded. What should we say to their families, the families who lost soldiers at the hands of Iranian militias or Iranian roadside bombs, once we reach a deal that's going to give Iran tens of billions of dollars in sanctions relief and international legitimacy without them changing their behavior?
I tell you what I've told them is that solving the nuclear issue diplomatically is a positive outcome, but make no mistake about it. There's at least 5 other malign activities in which Iran is engaged that cause me grave security concerns, and we won't take our eye on those 5, and you know what they are: ballistic missiles, sea-based mines, cyber activities, arms trafficking, and surrogates and proxies.
Thank you.